This is Governor Bob Ehrlich. Good day, doctors.
George Allen here. Good day, doctors.
Whoops. Good day, good evening, everyone. It's Friday. Good Friday, everyone. April 2nd, 2021. We are the doctors and the political architects here. Welcome, everyone, for our Good Friday show. Let's start with our panelists who are doctors that are on tonight. Let's start with Dr. Christopher Tomlinson, who is also the third vice chairman of the Maryland Republican Party. He hails from the part of Maryland that has normal Marylanders and actually have more Republicans than Democrats. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks for having me again.
Then we are joined by no one other than Mrs. Joey Lynn Huff. Dr. Huff, welcome. Dr. Huff lives in Frederick County, the land where they've got a they still have a Sonics there. They shut the Sonics down, the one that's on the way to Ocean City. She comes to the land of Sonics, you know. Brunswick, you're miles away from the Blair Witch Project, right? I understand you see my old teacher from Blair, the Blair Witch, Miss Diaz, you know. Do you see her around, you know?
No. So the funny thing about that is that I just heard about that yesterday. The only part of that Blair Witch movie, the only part that was filmed in Burkittsville is the sign. The rest of it was filmed in Montgomery County. It's kind of like Fargo, the movie Fargo. Only 2 minutes of the entire movie was filmed in Fargo, North Dakota. The rest was in Brainerd, Minnesota. But yet we still get a bad rap for that.
It puts your town on the map. It's kind of like I Dream of Jeannie. They filmed in California, not in Cocoa Beach, you know, because you see mountains. Last time I was in Florida, I did see the mountains down there. But anyways, our guest, Dr. Jeff Thornton. Jeff Thornton is a security expert. Welcome, Jeff. How are you doing?
Representing the class of Newcomb High, right? That was also from
That's right. And last but never the least, Don Irvine, Media Dean of Washington, Chairman of Accuracy in Academia, and former chair of Accuracy in Media in his glory days when they basically grilled folks like Mike Wallace and other lefties over at CBS and ABC and NBC back when we had 3 networks that lied to us. Now we have 5 networks, 6 networks that lied to us, I think. 5 or 6. I've lost count. So, and I just want to start with one thing. I want to share one thing today because everyone knows I'm an Orioles fan, so we got to start with this, you know. And we can't. Oh, never mind. Never mind.
We'll all sing it, Dwight.
Yes, we'll do that. We'll run it at the end. But anyways, the Orioles are 1-0. Baltimore Orioles 1-0. They're number 1, undefeated. They're better than the Yankees. They're better than the Red Sox today. You know, they're number 1. 161 games to go.
As bad as the Orioles are, if you're gonna play a team, I mean that's one of the teams you want to play are the Red Sox right now because I think they're still going to be a pretty bad team this year. So I think the Orioles will still finish last in the division, but it'll probably be a race to the bottom between those two.
Yeah, but you know what's funny? It's what I think is funny is the Orioles, right? If you lose to the Orioles, do you remember back when the Baltimore Colts were like, well, the Indianapolis Colts, Baltimore Colts, and they really were bad, Don? You probably remember this. Jeff remembers this. This is before the Mayflower vans, which just happened. You know, they just celebrated one of their anniversaries, the Mayflower moving trucks the other day. But what do you call it? They had every time a team, let's take a more modern. When the Redskins would lose every single game and you lose to the Redskins, you really felt bad when you lost to the Redskins because, you know, especially when you're like, remember the Cowboys? I think the year they went to the Super Bowl, the one loss they had was the Washington Redskins. You know, actually, can I say Redskins anymore?
Yes, on this show, that's what we say. We don't say football.
Why are you being politically correct, Dwight?
Oh, I'm not. It's
Yeah,
just
Dwight, Yeah, the Carroll County Times, my regular column I write for them, I've referenced the Redskins when I send it in. And
Awesome.
they actually do, they change it and remove the Redskins and change, and I actually say team formerly known as the Redskins, and they totally cut it out. It's the word is now forbidden in the press.
Yeah.
But,
No.
and also speaking of,
That's right. I mean, you know, when you're talking sports, though, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, in the baseball season, particularly when they average playing each other in the division about 19 times, if you lose a few games to a bad team, that's not a big deal. You know,
very true.
When you're in a football season, which will now be 17 games and not 16, and back, back in our day, there were 14 regular season games.
16.
Losing stung a lot more, I think, to a bad team than it was. I think all things have to be in perspective to the number of times you're playing the teams and stuff like that. With all that, but yeah, we'll see how the Orioles wind up doing this year. But I think that gives us a good segue into something today that I want to start us off.
Actually, can we start on Baltimore City, because we've got a little video that we want to since we're talking about, let's stay in Baltimore City real quick, Don. I want to share this commercial about Delegate Brooke Lehrman talking about how great Baltimore City public schools are. Give me a second, we'll show it right now. Whoops.
Madam Speaker, I rise as the mother of a Baltimore City public school student to tell my colleagues that the Baltimore City public school system is not failing. It is every day teachers show up in our Baltimore City public schools and they do absolutely everything that they could to help our children. Every principal in every school in Baltimore City now is doing everything they can. Is it a perfect school system? No, it's not a perfect school system.
Correct. As Baltimore City, Brooke Lehrman talks about the two good schools in the city. It's kind of funny. She's a Montgomery County native. Her dad was Terry Lehrman. We all know Terry. And Brooke basically likes, she seems to think, there's no reason why Brooke Lehrman should be, frankly, representing Baltimore City. And I think every representative from the State House that represents Baltimore City should all resign for the fact that how bad the schools are. And that's my rant on Baltimore City schools. So jump in. Anyone else who wants to talk about the ills of Baltimore City public schools?
She said that her kids were in Baltimore public schools?
Yep, they are in Baltimore. Evidently, they go to Baltimore City public schools, according to her.
So then why is the Maryland legislature constantly dumping millions of dollars into the Baltimore City education?
Yeah, they spent
It's not failing. If there's no problems and they're the number one in Maryland, number one county in Maryland, then why should we not be asking as taxpayers why all this money is being funneled into Baltimore City schools then? Yeah,
they spent $18,000 per child. You know how much it costs to send a child to St. Joe's Catholic School in Rosedale, which may as well be in Baltimore City. It's right at the county line. And it's $6,000 a year to send a child to St. Joe's, while Baltimore City Public Schools spends 3 times the amount like St. Joe's. And I'm willing to bet in Baltimore City there's other Catholic schools, parochial schools in Baltimore City that would educate kids for far less than $18,000. I think right around $18,000, you're talking about a really good prep school education in Baltimore City.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, if they would do what some other places have done, which we know is not going to happen in Maryland, particularly Baltimore, if they actually allowed, for vouchers, the parents would vote with their feet very, very quickly And I think that school system would empty out pretty much. Other schools would wind up taking a lot of the students. I mean, if the taxpayers are paying for this thing at this point, why not let the parents have a choice of how that money is spent? If they want to spend it in a private school, they ought to be able to do that instead of getting tied into these poorly performing schools.
Yeah, like Washington, D.C., they have turned around some of the worst schools in Ward 8, Ward 7, Ward 6, the really bad parts of D.C. They've got waiting lists for their charter schools in those areas. And they are outperforming even schools in the best parts of Washington, D.C., upper Northwest, I mean, why don't we try, would it hurt public schools so much if we tried charter schools or even vouchers? Why can't we give parents a tax credit, frankly, of $5,000 to send their kid, if they want to send their kids to a program school, or $6,000? It's a third of what we're spending on Baltimore City Public Schools, 1/3. Should we not give 1/3 of what we spend on Baltimore City Public Schools to parents of Baltimore City? As President George W. Bush said, these kids are given a death sentence in education by being in the wrong zip codes, being in Baltimore City Public Schools. Yeah.
They're already being, I mean, it's even worse than that with COVID, the pandemic, and with the virtual schooling and the hybrid. I mean, these kids aren't getting an education, and they're being held hostage. Their education is being held hostage, and that's a real problem. That's a real problem. If you're already in a low performing school, you don't have any options other than to do hybrid or to do virtual learning. That's another problem. And I think my husband, Senator Huff, I think he put in a bill to give families tax credits for virtually schooling their children.
Yep. And that, Chris, I know in Carroll County, you're a rural school district, and I'm sure is Carroll County spending $18,000 to send kids to public schools there?
No.
No, we don't have that kind of money, and nobody will give us that kind of money. Yeah, Annapolis isn't coming to bail us out, unfortunately, when we need extra money. But
because they don't have votes in Carroll County for them to care. There's not enough Democrat votes for Democrats to care about Carroll County.
Yeah. I mean, but like watching Brooke set. Actually sit there with a straight face. Well, I think a straight face. You couldn't see half her face because
she didn't even go to the mask.
She sits there and she actually says that the education is doing well. I mean, I want to say I'm surprised, but she's just one of many elected officials out of Baltimore County or Baltimore City who absolutely are. I mean, just I don't know why. I mean, you want to sit here and say you feel bad, but the voters, why do they continue to put these absolute jokes of a politicians into office who clearly do not care about their actual constituents? Instead, it's like Joey Lynn was saying, it's always people like her husband who live out in the suburbs, rural counties, who put in these bills to do more for the people in Baltimore City than their actual representatives. It's insane how these people get reelected. I don't get it.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, Joe, in Frederick County Schools, are they spending $18,000 per child?
No.
Not even Montgomery County, I think, is spending $18,000 per child.
I could ask Mike specifically what they spend per child. I don't know that off the top of my head. But, I mean, we've rated the transportation fund. Well, not we as Republicans, but the transportation fund has been rated to provide for the school, the school systems in Baltimore City. And remember, the Baltimore City schools didn't have any air conditioning when they would go, into middle to late June, right? The middle of June, the middle to late part of June.
Well, we had that problem too, by the way. Remember they closed schools down a few years ago because of the heat.
I'm saying, so we have all this money that has been literally raided and dumped into Baltimore City, but yet somehow The schools are not performing the way they should. These kids don't have a good education. The schools themselves are having real issues. I don't know how much more money a person can dump into Baltimore City. Somebody has to look at that and figure out really what is the problem, because these children are suffering and it's not right.
Joe, what would you do if you got $6,000 from the taxpayers? A third of the money would you send your kids to a parochial school?
Yes, I would send, because it's like for each child, it's like 8, depending on the age. I have 3 kids, so it would be $6,000 to $8,000 per kid per year.
And I think
maybe even $10,000.
Yeah. And when
I'm spending like $30,000 a year. On
but if the state gave you $6,000 per child, you'd have $18,000.
I'd send them
to play with, And my point is this: there is no competition to public schools in the state of Maryland. There is no competition at all, other than private schools, which benefits the wealthy, for the lack of Montgomery County parents, basically, at the end of the day, who will send their kids to a private school over sending to a public school. But folks who live, say, in the rural parts like the Eastern Shore, that's not a luxury most parents have, to send their kids to a private school opposed to a failing public school.
Well, I mean, the closest Catholic school is in Frederick, so I would have to drive at least in half an hour, 45 minutes every day to and from Frederick, because I live in Brunswick, which is a rural part of the state. So, but I would do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting though, Dwight, because I mean, as you talk about it, I mean, just like Maryland is like a lot of other states. I mean, you do have a diverse population. Eastern Shore is not heavily populated, and it tends to be a lot poorer economically in general. And you have these just the varying economic situations going on throughout the state. But everybody relies on public education, so there's always public education wherever you live in general. But there's not always private education where you live. However, if there was some kind of a voucher program, either funded by the state or funded by the feds, I think this would speed up, and actually encourage those that wanted to start these programs to do so. It could make it worth their while to actually create some of these institutions, these schools in areas that don't have them, where there is more of an imbalance. I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for doing this, but the teachers unions, the last thing they want is this. The National School Board Association, says, this may sound nice, but all it does is siphon public money away from the school systems. We need to strengthen the public school systems, not weaken them. But where's their performance? We've been giving them tons of money for decades.
Yes.
How they performed overall. I mean, and under the pandemic, they have just shown their true colors as to who's number one. It's not the students.
And here's something else for you, Don. 1972 recorded the lowest SAT scores. As a result, the AFT and NEA and local school systems more than tripled the funding on public schools. And the test scores, I did a research and an article on this back in 2000, roughly either 99, 2000, that era, and it was flatline. Basically, test scores have not gone up at all since 1970. It's basically a virtual flatline. The patient is dead, frankly. I think we need to try new things to fix our public school system. I mean, if Joe Biden really wants to be the education president that he claimed to be, him and Kamala Harris, why don't we give vouchers a try? Why don't we try something outside of the box thinking?
The question is did they send their kids to public school, or did they send their kids to private school?
I'm willing to bet they did not.
Sure that Hunter Biden went to private school. That was a lot.
Of course. And I think Camilla and her kids Camilla probably went to a private school, as did her kids. Even though she claimed she was one of the kids that was bused into those schools. Then we find out, what was it, a couple years before she was born that happened?
Well, isn't it? It's two peas in a pod. Both of them are liars. So.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and move on here because we still have some. There's a lot to still talk about, I think, in general, and I want to bring this subject up because I am seething. This really ticks me off, and this is all of this nonsense about the Georgia election law that has been passed. That they've gone in to try to fix some things, to do some things. The knee-jerk reaction has been, that this is voter suppression. That they're trying to keep the black votes out and all this kind of stuff. But the icing on the cake here today was that Major League Baseball announced late this afternoon that they're going to pull the All-Star game out of Atlanta and move it elsewhere over the voting law. And I'm willing to bet that Commissioner Manfred and everybody else in the Major League Baseball front office, as well as most of the baseball executives, have not even bothered to read the law. Because, I watched a couple of sports programs tonight, and all these sports writers, it's like, this is great. This is exactly what they should be doing, et cetera, because there've been, people like us, the sportscasters that were black and things like that said, we're being, our rights were being infringed upon, we were being suppressed. But the law doesn't, it actually is good. I mean, it actually expanded voting opportunities. It did not restrict them in the end. It did address issues that were related to the pandemic, but those measures that they put in place were pandemic-related measures. They were never intended to become permanent, but the liberals, the Democrats, they want them to become permanent, and their allies in the media have just been pushing forth lies, absolute lies about this law. And it's a travesty. It's just they have no conscience here.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, the one piece that really stood out to me, and I've had a good time reading, reading the same story basically, but from different news sources, but even CNN's coverage of it. I was reading the one portion, and I still couldn't believe. I was like, how can you possibly spin at least this one portion to be bad? The one where now they want an identification in order to, I believe, was it to go in person or to receive the absentee? But all you have to have
it's the mail-in balloting.
Yeah, it's a driver's license, an ID card, or even just like a BG&E bill or their equivalent of that, or any Comcast bill, whatever, you name it. It had to be some kind of documentation that came from that had your name on it. It's not like they were saying, if they had said you have to have a driver's license, I'd have been like, yeah, okay, I understand. Maybe it's gonna be difficult for some people. But the fact that CNN and Biden, they're all putting this up, saying how dare they?
Yeah.
If you can't provide a single document that has your name on it, I don't know. You probably have more problems than voting, I would imagine. But I mean, yeah, you're right. They have just blown this thing up into something that it's not.
And here's something else, guys. I'm going to put on the screen right now. This is from 2000. This is hold on. This is the 2000 butterfly ballot that they used in Georgia, and not in Georgia, in Florida. Back then in 2000, they were calling the butterfly ballot voter suppression. For the left, everything, whenever they lose, everything is voter suppression to them. Got news for you. We have, these, you need to show ID to get your COVID vaccine. So are the Democrats now waging war on the poor people IDs? They want poor people to die of COVID. That's what I'm getting from all this, right?
Right. And I want to say on the ID thing, I went back and looked because I'm writing about this for our newsletter, but the governor signed a voter ID for in-person, photo ID in 2005. Okay, Georgia's had this since 2005 for in-person voting. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution did a survey just recently, and they found that like 74% of the people actually thought that this was a good idea. 63% of the blacks thought it was a good idea. 55% of those surveyed said one of their concerns was that they were more concerned that people who were not legal, we're going to vote, we're going to cast an illegal ballot, versus having multiple options for going to vote. So they've already had this, as Chris was alluding to. I mean, Georgia has for the ID requirement there are 6 generally accepted forms of ID in Georgia. I mean, really, how many more do you really need? Or you can get a free voter ID card from the state of Georgia to vote. And the two main things that they're looking for the ballot, for the absentee ballot, I mean, one would be a driver's license number. You don't even have to take a picture of it. You can just write the driver's license number. So, okay, if you don't drive, do you have a social security number? Last 4 digits of social security number. I mean, really, how difficult is this?
Yeah, exactly. And, what I'd like to know is, here's and then you have all these Coca-Cola, basically they're all upset about this, hence, I do not have a Coca-Cola right now. I've got ice. And because I don't think I'll be flying Delta. Unfortunately, Delta flies a lot of places, but thank God you have companies like Southwest and other airlines. But Delta's another one. Leave Atlanta. Go. Move your hub. And I say, if Coca-Cola wants to move their operations out of Atlanta, go for it. Do it.
But it's the same thing. I mean, you talk about them being woke. You're exactly right, Dwight. But this is the same thing with the executives of Major League Baseball. They haven't read the law. They have had this reaction to what the media, what the Democrats, the liberals have said about this. The narrative is that this law is basically racist. It's suppressing votes. It's keeping down the black vote. But once again, when you read this, I mean, a lot of this stuff was brought up because there were a lot of proposals when the bill was being addressed. And in the end, the law that got signed did not reflect a lot of the things that some of the legislators had proposed. So, souls to the polls on Sunday. This was a big deal. Black churches taking people to the polls on Sunday. Well, you can actually still do that if you want. That's an option to do that. But as the Wall Street Journal reported last week, when they looked at the figures, 3% of the votes cast were on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Right? Yep. Okay. So souls to the polls didn't drive anything. I mean, nobody really wanted to vote on Sunday. They voted Monday through Friday and then on Saturday. The legislators said, okay, we're going from 1 Saturday mandated a month for early voting to 2 Saturdays, right? They have about 3 weeks of early voting. Go look at New York. They have about 8 or 9 days of early voting, right? I mean, how many more can you do this? Another issue in there were the hours. The counties are given a chance to say, the state says, we want it, if you're at the polls by 7 p.m., you're still going to vote. And they prefer to have a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But if it needs to be adjusted a little bit in your area, then you can adjust it, to reflect what's going in the area. Now, if you may have seen that Joe Biden got 4 Pinocchios from the Washington Post fact checker for the statements he was making more than once, where he said, that they were hurting the working man because, people get off of work at 5 o'clock, they can't vote by 5. But he was referring to something that really doesn't exist, right? So even the Washington Post, who went to, and they quoted other experts, polling experts and election experts, they said, no, they all reached a consensus that this law actually helps and expands the voting opportunities. And since 2005, since they put this voter ID in place, where all the liberals had said at that point in time, once again, suppression, all that kind of stuff, poll tax, whatever, voter turnout has increased, right? Yep. Voter turnout has increased in Georgia. Georgia has shown that you can do this and you can increase voter turnout. What's another big deal with all of this? It's, I also talked about, they can't hand out water and food to the people, so they're gonna, they'll be out there sweating in line or whatever. They'll be dying of hunger and thirst. Okay, there'll be water stations there. What the press won't talk about is that, the way the law is said is that if they're in line, you cannot hand them something within 25 feet of somebody being in line, because that'll be considered electioneering, because there was a lot of water, a lot of other things being handed out with labels on there from candidates and whatnot. Yep. But if you get it beforehand, if you bring your own, that's fine. But once again, that's being twisted. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, and Don, and here's something else, okay? You're old enough to remember car trips in the car. Jeff, you are as well, right? And what did you do? You packed your own stuff, or you stopped off and got food and ate it in the car, or you stopped off and ate there, and the car cooled down or whatever. First of all, you're not at the most you're going to be in line. Let's say worst case here, 3 hours. I'm sorry, I don't think anybody's ever starved to death for not having food or water for 3 hours. I am sorry. It's like are you that and can you not bring your own bottle of water from home? I'm not even saying go buy it. You can bring your own bottle. You can bring your own cookies. You can bring your own.
Probably call some up from your home or somebody say, "Hey, can you bring me some water? Can you bring me something so I don't lose my place to buy?"
Most people have cell phones today that they can call for someone to bring them something. And there are election poll workers. Poll workers who are there to help and to give water and to bring food whenever it's needed. So for them to say that there's voter suppression when they have all these opportunities to go to vote early, absentee, or on the day of, that's just
And Joe Lynn, what about the campaign workers? I mean, in Maryland, at least I know this from my campaigns, Don's campaigns. When we had people working the polls, we'd send people around to give them food.
Yes.
That are working the polls. We'd send water. People out giving out water to those people. It's kind of like this. Kind of throws back to if you guys remember Hurricane Katrina. I remember there was a woman on NBC News that was talking about how she's had Hurricane Katrina hit. I believe it was a Monday or Tuesday. She said she had nothing to eat Thursday night. She had nothing to eat Friday. She had nothing to eat Saturday, Sunday, and I'm like, wait a minute. The hurricane didn't really. Let's say I'll give you Sunday and Monday, but what were you doing the 3 previous days? Why weren't you able to eat the 3 previous days? And they were all, and every one of those people, they had this one little kid that said, "My grandmother needs her insulin, Mr. President." It's like they were actually they didn't say Mr. President. George Bush, my grandmother needs her insulin. I love how Democrats, every time they mess something up, when something's going wrong, they happen to find everyone that's blaming the president for the problems. I don't seem to remember anybody blaming Barack Hussein Obama back when we had the floods in the Houston area. Nobody blamed Barack Obama for where was FEMA. You had people there. And then again, Texas just don't whine. That's the other thing. But
why don't we let Jeff? We haven't heard from Jeff tonight, so I think we better carve out a little time for Jeff here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't know. The voting thing is definitely, it's tough. I've seen news clips where people in Georgia have said that they've been in line for 11 hours. So whether those people have been handpicked or not, I mean, I've seen the clips which shows people in line for a long time, and it seems like a lot of people don't really understand why the no food provision is in there. I can certainly understand if food is being marketed or given to people for political affiliation, that certainly needs to be squashed. But again, I don't know. I don't have enough information to make an informed decision. I'm just getting my news from like everyone else does. But from my perspective, it seems reasonable that if somebody is in line for a long time, they should be, allowed to take a break or something without losing their place or whatever. I mean, there should be some provision. So I'm not saying that, for example, if the issue is that they don't want to be influenced politically, then fine. You can put a provision there saying, that poll workers, or you can't have politically, labeled, food items. But if, again, I don't know. I don't know the situation. It's just, and I don't know how much is really being suppressed. The problem that I have is that, again, I know that working, when I used to work, as in retail, I was working, in Flint, Michigan, I was working a computer job. I couldn't get off voting day to vote because I couldn't get off. We only had one day to vote. We didn't have early elections, and I was working all day. I couldn't take off the time to vote.
Well, your employer was breaking the law. They're supposed to give you an hour to go vote. They were breaking the law.
I had lunch, but in practice, getting to a polling place, being able to get in line, vote, and get back to the work in time, it's just not going to happen. So it's just one of those things that, yeah, in theory it works, but in practice it doesn't always work. And I'm not saying, again, I don't know enough of these situations to know how unfair it is. I'm just saying that, I certainly appreciate when people make concessions for people that work or have issues, where they allow people to, have no reason absentee voting, where they say, okay, I just, I can't really take the time off. Can I vote absentee? If you allow a reason for that and say, yeah, it's because my job doesn't really give me time or whatever, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with, having all kinds of provisions to ensure that the votes and signatures are valid. But I don't know. It's definitely a contentious issue. And like I said, I don't have all the facts, just what, the news is given. So
my bad, it's 2 hours, Jeff. They should have given you 2 hours.
Well, I mean, Jeff, the thing too is that, you just mentioned about the no excuses. That's one of the things that Georgia kept in the law, was that you can still have no excuses, absentee balloting. So once again, you can do that. And I should have said too on the ID for the absentee, the mail-ins, is that one of the reasons that they did that is that because they basically did away with the signature matching. They had a lot of problems with the signature matching, getting some kind of recognized government ID number, was basically, it's either valid or it's invalid. But having people subjectively trying to look at signatures and see if the signature matches what's in the system, that was extremely flawed. So this is a far better system, I think, than they had in place. And they even, they shortened up the runoff period, which I think is a good idea, because I think the runoff period was too long and it just dragged on, and lots of garbage that happens during that period of time. And do the Republicans hope that they will win back the Senate seats in the future? Absolutely. Do they think that's going to help? They probably hope that this will help, but they have no way of knowing. Participation in Georgia, voter has been growing, and the state is tilting a little more blue every time around. So the Republicans don't quite have the same stranglehold as they did before. So there's
polls. You said that 3%. I remember you saying that last week too. That 3% voted, but is that 3% that would have voted anyway, or is that 3% that wouldn't have voted? Because again, it was pretty close. So 3% may be enough to
right, but I mean, their argument really was that it was important that we have that in there because, otherwise people couldn't get to the polls. But when you look at it, and very few people were actually voting. I mean, you'd get 7 or 8 times more people voting Monday through Saturday than you would on Sunday. Then you kind of say it's not making, in general, it's not making that big a difference overall. When you're just looking, if you just look at raw numbers. I mean, your point is well taken, though, Jeff, on that. But we've seen the same thing when early voting started in Maryland. It was pathetic.
Yeah,
nobody would show up.
A lot of people didn't even know that, that you could go to the polls on Sundays. People thought that it was closed. Nobody really, not a lot of people really know that it's not closed or that it's open.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Right? So you can vote on a Sunday. If you have the weekend off, you can vote. Early voting on Saturday and Sunday, and people didn't realize that, because I know I did robocalls to inform people that the early voting places were open 7 days a week, even on Sunday.
And gentlemen, if they really, here's the thing, if they really can't vote, you can ask for an absentee ballot, and you can vote via absentee. By the way, Jeff, you lived in Ypsilanti, right?
I lived in Ypsilanti initially, then I moved to Grand Lake, so it's just south of Flint. So that's
kind of final thought for Ypsilanti. I think you know where I'm going there.
Well, the thing is, you talked before about you start off with baseball and football, and I'm hold back here, but so Detroit is Detroit Lions. I mean, they've got to be tied for worst football team. The Tigers are pretty good baseball wise, but you look at this. You mentioned the school districts. I mean, Detroit is a study in failure for the school district. I mean, there are so many issues. You've heard, story after story about the school districts taking these exorbitant vacations to Africa, and no matter how much money they give to the school district, it's like they still can't afford toilet paper in the schools. I'm like, what is that? The federal government, state government gives them money, and still the students can't get toilet paper. It just seems ridiculous.
Well, I mean, at least Dwight, when we were going to school, maybe for Jeff too, is just that
Jeff was going to school same time.
Your school supply, most of your school supplies were provided. The basics were provided by the school system. I mean, you always had to buy pens and notebooks and stuff like that. But I know as you know, when my kids were younger, we were seeing the beginning of that trend, or somewhere where parents were given a list of saying what the kids were required to bring, and a lot of that stuff were classroom supplies that were used to be provided by the school system, and now not only were we paying high taxes, we were now being asked to provide all kinds of classroom supplies,
cleaning supplies.
I can only imagine it's gotten worse.
And by the way, Don, here's something even funny. Around Christmas time, they sent like suggested gifts for teachers, and you would not believe that stuff. What is stuff from? They have Tiffany's, and they said Cartier. It's like, I'm not buying Cartier for myself, for my family.
Give the teacher a Rolex.
Yeah, things are maybe they'll be on time for class.
All right, let's talk. Let's switch to another favorite Biden topic real quick here, and that is the border. So we talked about this a little bit last week. Situation hasn't gotten any better. Did everybody see that clip that was released with those two little girls being thrown over the wall?
How old were those girls? I mean, they looked like they were this tall.
I think one was like 3 and the other one was like 6 or something like that. I mean, that was a 14-foot drop.
Yeah. And shame on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for opening up those floodgates. And now you have AOC. And but I talked about this with another. Now he's a Senate member in Maryland, but he was a Virginia guy back then. But we talked about this, and now AOC is talking about reparations for illegals that come into America. And we were talking about that once in a discussion about how people hire illegals. You pay, you get a maid. You don't have to pay a minimum wage to clean your house, or if you got somebody doing driveway or mowing your lawn, you don't have to pay the market value. And I was talking about what's going to happen when they get amnesty. Within a generation, they're going to be talking about winning reparations for their parents who are here illegal that worked were underpaid for years and years and years, and they'll be able to point to people out and say, my mother or my grandmother was a maid and she only made $1 a day because of those horrible people, So you need to give us.
Once you open up that reparations deal, that box, you will never close it again because it'll spread like wildfire. We already saw Evanston, Illinois. Their reparations deal wasn't really true reparations, but they're calling reparations, and that is, they'll provide the housing. They'll help pay your mortgage or whatever. It's up to $25,000 for a handful of families and stuff like that. But that is the beginning of all of that. But on this border issue, so now, since the time we met, the media is now being allowed into those facilities. Though I did talk with Cheryl Chumley, who's the Washington Times online opinion editor, and her opinion about this was just that it reminded her of the Communist Party in China. And we could say the same thing for North Korea, where they're allowed in, but it does seem like you're getting a minder there to make sure that you're only seeing what they want you to see, that it still comes off as somewhat positive for the administration. So you don't really get to see the conditions. The fact that you've got 18,000 people in a place that was supposed to hold maybe 1,000 or 200 people or whatever. The Biden solution is, we'll open up Fort Bliss and we'll get 5,000 beds here. We'll put them in hotels and spend, like $80 million to put up people in hotels. It is insane.
But they won't do it for veterans.
Sorry.
That's right.
Nor will they do that for the business that have been affected because of the pipeline shut down by Joe Biden over in your former home part of the country, Joanne. The local businesses that are failing because of the jobs in drilling companies are all leaving because there's no more XL pipeline, no more fracking,
Yeah, but Joe
justice?
Joe Biden said, that, look, you can get another job. You can get a solar job.
Yes. See, they can learn to code, too, by the way. Didn't his fraudulency say learn to code?
Yeah. I mean, they've done, the people who've worked in the oil fields, they've done this. Some of it is multi-generational. Yeah. And, I don't know. It's really a shame. And then this morning when I was listening on the radio, one of the talk radio stations, I was listening to the jobs that are coming back and how the Biden administration is so excited about how many jobs that they've created. They didn't create anything.
The
the Dakota Access Pipeline. They have cut the Keystone Pipeline. They have cut, all these different jobs, and then they're going to say that. Yeah, they're going to say that they have all this job creation. Where? There's so many people that are out of work. I don't know.
Joe Lynn has his
no, you're wrong. They've created jobs because they're starting to reopen the businesses they shut down. The Democrats shut down.
Well, right.
That's their job creation.
Oh, and let's not forget about the fact that these Democrat-run cities and states continue to condone lawless behavior and burning down, businesses and people's livelihoods. So what's it matter? I mean, then they stand there with their hands held out saying, oh, well, we need to rebuild our city and our state. Well, when you let criminals run around and burn down businesses and burn down buildings and tear down statues and wreck your city and your state, and then you want a handout from the government, taxpayers should not have to pay for that. That's absolutely awful behavior.
Maybe those liberal mayors are sitting there thinking like, hey, look, if they do create all that destruction, we'll be able to go to Uncle Joe there and just say, we need a lot of money to fix all this stuff, right?
Well, and here's the problem with that. So, they're always coming for their handout.
Right.
When they're not, because they're too busy going and trying to defund the police and trying for reparations and all this crazy, insane stuff, giving stimulus checks to illegals, tax credits to illegals. Come on now. And, we just came out of a pandemic when businesses were, our entire country was shut down with many other countries. And now we're just open the floodgate for all these illegals to come in and flood into our country. And we've all been at home and we can't go out, but yet, everyone has to wear masks, but these illegals can come in and do whatever they want. They can get whatever they want when they're not taxpayers and they're not American citizens. And we're just supposed to let everything go. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely shameful what this president and his administration.
It's fraudulency.
It does seem that part of the administration's answer to with these illegal aliens coming in too, and our concerns about COVID, what they may be bringing in, is just let's give them vaccinations ahead of some other people, the real citizens.
Well, what's so ironic about that, Don, is the fact that if I've heard from several people who've received the COVID shot. I don't know if any of you have received it. I have not, but you have to show your ID. Your driver's license to even receive,
Joe, that's just Democrats
a COVID shot. So how?
Joe, Democrats just want to kill off basically, they just want to kill off poor people because they can't afford an ID. That's why we can't have ID laws. But they want to kill them off because they can't provide an ID. So no COVID shot for you.
You're wrong there, Dwight. Because here in the great state of Maryland, we give illegals driver's license. We also give them in-state tuition. We give them scholarships. We give
we're about to give them stimulus money too, aren't we?
Yes. Look, tax credits. Look, the sky's the limit here in the state of Maryland.
Wait, why do you get? Wait, don't they have to pay taxes to get a tax credit?
No.
Just saying.
Actually, yeah. I'm not even. I think that used to be the case. But now I think you could actually claim a tax credit and actually get most of that money, even if you don't pay any taxes.
And if you have kids, being an illegal alien, you also get child tax credit. I mean, wow.
And Yakov Smirnoff would say, "America, what a country! You don't even need to have your papers anymore to get all the good stuff."
I mean, if there's any positive that comes out for conservatives, at least we can know that policies, that these laws that Democrats pass, they actually there's an effect when they do this. I mean, I think it was Joey Lynn's husband who I can't remember talking about the Trust Act that's getting passed. Most likely to the General Assembly, or the earned income tax relief that the illegals are getting. But I believe I saw it on this Facebook page. It said, by us as the General Assembly passing these laws, these are the kind of things that attract illegals to your state, to your county. And the Democrats, oh, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Nobody's gonna come all the way from Mexico to America. Because Joe Biden and his administration, by them getting in there and doing what they're doing, obviously you're seeing these illegals just pour and pour. The laws that they pass, the legislation, and just the fact that they're in office to inspire people to do what they're doing. It's really something.
Yeah, that goes along with why these people are coming here, though, right, Chris? The potential promise of some citizenship or some other things, better paying jobs than they had in their home countries. Having Joe Biden elected has basically opened up floodgates. These people, pretty much from the day that it was determined that Biden had indeed won the election, they started coming. They started making their 1,000-mile plus journey, to do this. It may take them a while, but they figured that they could get there. How many times have we seen the pictures of these people with those Biden T-shirts of like "Let us in" and stuff like that? Well, he's letting them in. He doesn't know what to do with them all.
They've actually said that. They have been told. They actually said it. They reported on it and said that that Biden. We like Biden because he said that we could come to America. And make no mistake about it, they know exactly which states that they can come to that are receptive to illegal aliens.
Yep, we had
they know that when they come here. Just like when I worked at WIC, which is Women's, Infant, and Children. It was a supplemental program.
Yep.
They didn't. The only thing that they had to do is write on a piece of paper that they lived at a specific address. They didn't have to provide any proof. Like the military, all military people who came in for WIC, they had to provide everyone other than an illegal alien had to provide 2 to 3 pieces of documentation saying that they lived at that address and that they were a citizen of Frederick County, a citizen of the United States, and that they had to prove that they lived at that address, i.e. A rent contract or a mortgage and power bill or a cable bill or something, or a credit card bill. They had to prove it. And if they couldn't prove it, then they were denied. But illegal aliens, they just flocked. They knew exactly where they needed to come, and they got everything that they could get.
And Joe, it's funny. You got to do the exact same thing if you enroll your kid in a school. Let's say you move out of Frederick County. God would only know why you'd want to move to Montgomery County, but you move to Montgomery County, they'll want to see your bill, your proof of residency in Montgomery County, and they'll want to see your immunization records for your kids. Mm-hmm. While these people are coming in, they're not immunized. That's when you got things like tuberculosis, leprosy, and all these diseases that are making a comeback. Polio is making a comeback. Because why? Because of the large influx.
But you can't even enroll your kids. Like when I enrolled my my youngest into kindergarten, well, any of them for that matter, you had to provide documentation that you immunized your children. And if you didn't, they could not be allowed to, you were not allowed to enroll your children in school.
Exactly. And my point being,
if you're an illegal alien, hey, whatever.
So, Jonathan, you could have said you were illegals and they would have you would never have to go to the vaccine.
I guess. The only downfall for me is that my husband is a state senator, and you know, they kind of know that.
It's kind of hard,
So can't get away with it.
Yeah.
All right, it's about time for final thoughts. You want to go?
Yes.
All right. Let's
do this. Let's have some fun with our new features with final thoughts. So, who would like to be go with your first final thoughts? Chris, you want to go with your final thoughts now? It's multiple thoughts.
Sure.
Let me know when you're ready to go. Okay.
Sure. So, Carroll County, we've got 8 municipalities, and all of our elections are happening next month in May. They're all coming up, and if anybody's out there paying attention, please vote in these elections, because in Carroll County, beautiful red Carroll County, that is how Democrats get elected. They get in these nonpartisan, and I use that term loosely, to these seats. And anyhow, working with a couple great candidates, trying to make sure they get in there.
Who are these great candidates? Tell us who they are. Can you tell us who they are?
Yeah. We just in Westminster. I'm going to talk Westminster, City of Westminster, our county seat, our big metropolis. We've got a great
McDaniel's College.
Yeah, we got McDaniel College. We've got a great guy named Dennis Dillon, Vice President of Sales for a publicly traded company. He is family man, coach, and businessman, and he is a fantastic candidate who is running for mayor. I mean, he's not somebody who has a political background. He didn't want to run for mayor. He's running for mayor because the only person who was going to run for mayor was is a very, very far left teacher, public school teacher, and former McDaniel professor, who's very. I mean, we're in a terrible position right now. Westminster, Carroll County, the whole state, the whole country, the whole world. We're all trying to crawl out of this pandemic, and I don't know about you, but I don't think I want to turn over the keys of the city to somebody who teaches environmental science right now. I mean, we should we need a mayor who's going to be somebody who for 30 some years, who has a master's degree in business and finance. That's the kind of people we need. People who aren't doing this because they want to, but people who are stepping up because they see that the community needs it and they're doing it. Not because they are going to get patted on the back by all their friends. No, they're doing. This guy is stepping up to the plate. Didn't want to, but the town needs him, the community needs him, and here I am advocating for him. But that's in 5 weeks. Lots to get done in 5 weeks in Westminster.
Jody Lynn, you want to give your final thoughts?
All right. Well, happy Good Friday, everyone. We're in the at the end of Holy Week at this point. Today, right before this great program, my kids and I were involved in an Easter egg dyeing challenge. So we had many winners with that. It was a lot of fun, and I had to exit left and come up here and get on this program. So I was disqualified in the Easter egg challenge. So there's a lot of screaming, hooting, and hollering. I don't know if you guys heard all of that, but we are very competitive here in the Huff House, especially for Easter egg dyeing and all the Easter egg decorations and stuff. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I just want to say that today the Maryland legislature went back into session at 5:30 to vote on some more bills. It's just constant nonsense from the Maryland legislature. It's just one thing after the next, where these Democrats are trying to get everything that they possibly can get for anybody who isn't an American citizen, who isn't a Marylander, and they believe in America last and Marylanders last. This is a real problem. And as Chris said, for Carroll County, this people in Carroll County, you need to go and vote. It starts at the local level and goes up from there. And when they talk about nonpartisan elections, that's a bunch of nonsense. They're all partisan, whether they say that it's a nonpartisan election or not. It's totally partisan. They still have their ideology, and they're going to vote with their ideology, whether they identify as a Republican or a Democrat. They still go in there as a Republican or a Democrat. So just remember that. And I don't know, as far as the voter suppression in Georgia, again, you should, it's against the law for you not to be able to go out and vote. Your employer says that you can't go vote. It's against the law for them to do that. So you have plenty of time to go vote, and lack of poor planning on some people's part, like not bringing food or water. Nobody should have to go to the polls thinking that they need to bring food and water to the polls while they wait in line. That's kind of ridiculous. But if it does happen, I believe in civility and good manners and human decency to ask someone in front of you or behind you to say, hey, can you hold my spot while I, run and get a drink or something. So I just believe that there still is common good and decency still left here in America. And with that being said, happy Easter, and I wish everyone a blessed Easter and a blessed weekend.
Jeff Thornton, you're next.
Thanks. Yeah, I've been trying to think of things to talk about. I don't know, a lot of subjects. I did visit the Baltimore Zoo just recently, and that was kind of a new experience for me. So I don't like making a lot of comparisons between Michigan and Maryland, but having lived in Michigan for so long, I do say that I have enjoyed the Michigan Zoo in Detroit. It's a little bit better than the Maryland Zoo, I think. I got through that whole zoo in about 2 hours, I think, whereas the Detroit Zoo takes you all day. But that being said, I did get to see a little bit of Baltimore, and it does remind me a little bit of Detroit too. So, I feel bad for these cities because you want to see people succeed. You want to see communities come together and support each other. It's just tough. I don't know what the solution is. It's just disheartening when you see, so many homes that are just boarded up. You just feel like, there's a problem and you just don't even know how to begin to solve it. So I get that, that Baltimore has its share of issues. I wish I had the solution. I know the school district there is suffering. I feel bad for the students because obviously, regardless of the situation, the students and our kids are our future. So we want to protect them. We want to make sure that they're educated and that they're provided every opportunity, whether the public schools, charter schools like they have a few in Michigan, or private schools. I mean, I'm a big proponent of, supporting schools that are successful, but ensuring that, that schools can succeed, giving them the tools, giving the teachers that really do care and want to teach their students, giving them the resources, both monetarily and with, materials, giving them the resources they need to succeed. So it's tough. In my experience, it's been more the administration, the school districts that have been the problems rather than the teachers. So I can't say specifically about Maryland. I'm not really here long enough to really know the intricacies, but Detroit was another sad story where it was really, the teachers were trying to do what they could, but they just had so little resources to work with. But that being said, to echo Joy Lynn's statements, this is a week of remembrance for those that choose to observe it. So keep that in mind. There are bigger things in this world than just ourselves. So I think it's always good to put ourselves out of the, set aside our own issues at times and think about bigger picture issues. So that being said, have a blessed week and, visit your local church or institution this Sunday if that's your inclination.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. By the way, Ypsilanti, home of Domino's Pizza. And
yeah, Domino's Farms is Ypsilanti. That's the huge place. Domino Farms Pizza is, but also Little Caesars is based out of Michigan.
Yeah.
Crazy,
Little Caesars is good.
Yeah. No, it's not. It is the worst pizza in the world. By the way, but did you guys know this? The Carney brothers founded Pizza Hut, and I believe Monahan was the guy. A couple of Irish folks basically made pizza a household item in America. Jerry King would be so proud. John Irvine.
Oh yeah.
All right. Yeah, I don't know about little. My daughter loves Little Caesars, but that's because it's cheap more than anything else. The taste didn't matter as much as the fact that it was cheap when her kids were smaller. They are now. Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, one thing here is just the Democrats are definitely out to spend and tax as much as they can. President Biden unveiled another spending bill, about $2.3 trillion worth of infrastructure, which is most people think of as roads and bridges, but actually there's not a lot of roads and bridge money in this bill. So it sounds a lot like the COVID relief plan. Not a lot of money left for real direct COVID relief, but a lot of other port projects and special interests, and that's what it'll be. Marcus, Arizona might be happy because I think there was supposed to be something like $500 million for electric charging stations, or that type of thing. So maybe that'll make Marcus happy. But in general, once again, and they're going to pay for it. He wants to pay for it by raising the corporate tax rate back up and then taxing the wealthy. Very typical kind of Democrat strategy on how that they're going to do things. This administration is going to be, if people thought the Obama administration was liberal, it's like you ain't seen nothing yet, because this is going to be far worse when it comes to progressivism and leftism going on in this administration, I think, going forward. The other thing is in our backyard is just as Maryland, as we're trying to open up, of course, those of us that live in Montgomery County always wonder what kind of an area are we living in, and we're seeing that our wonderful county executive, Mark Elrich, and along with the health guy, Travis Gay, they are urging the governor to revisit all of the restrictions and that he had loosened up and to maybe tighten them back up again. It's like, we're trying to get back to normal. The case spikes are not so severe that you have to do anything. But this, to me, is just smacks of another way of how the Democrats, Elrich and company, they just want to keep their thumb down on all of us here in Montgomery County. It's all about control. It's not about helping businesses and helping people and letting us get back to our normal lives. But it's about controlling every facet of our lives. And this is just a horrible, horrible thing that they're doing. And Dwight, if you actually really do want to run for county executive, really go for it, because this really sucks here right now.
Yeah. That was a great April Fool's joke, by the way.
You got me for a second there.
What threw me was it when I started talking about how Mark Elric thinks Star Trek Discovery is a masterpiece? Is that when you realized it was a joke?
Yeah.
And he doesn't like Shamrock Shakes, but he does actually. So I'm trying to think where I saw, but somebody actually said he actually likes Star Trek Discovery. So poor judgment. My final thoughts now are a couple things. One, it's the end of Holy Week, and Passover is almost over. Good Friday to everyone, and happy Easter this Sunday. And then next week is going to. Then we have Tax Week. April 15th is right around the corner. Somebody's got to pay for.
It's May now.
It's
May
extended to May.
Oh, federal taxes are due until May. That is awesome. Wow, a broken clock is right twice a day, I guess. So that's great. You don't need to worry about paying taxes in April. So we have until the 15th now of May, everyone. So that's great. But my final thought is this. One, I tell you, I want to just revisit Terry Lehrman real quick. I want to run this commercial one more time for our folks who may not have caught it in the beginning. This is Delegate Terry Lehrman talking about the great Baltimore City Public Schools.
Madam Speaker, I rise as the mother of a Baltimore City public school student to tell my colleagues that the Baltimore City public school system is not failing. It is every day teachers show up in our Baltimore City public schools and they do absolutely everything that they could to help our children. Every principal in every school in Baltimore City now is doing everything they can. Is it a perfect school system? No, it's not a perfect school system.
And with that, that's my final thought. Baltimore City public schools are failing, and they're failing. And delegates like elitist Brooke Lehrman, who grew up in Montgomery County, now represents Baltimore City, and is trying, shame on you, Delegate Lehrman. Shame on you for saying that Baltimore City schools are so great. They are struggling with the fact that Baltimore City schools, you've got the highest failure rate in the entire state of Maryland, the lowest graduation rate in the entire state of Maryland. You don't need to be number one at all the bad things, Baltimore City. Why don't you got? And then you've got the mayor who has now bought a house in Florida, not too far from my home in Florida. She's in the next county over, but really, where's the outrage? Where are the articles? Do you remember Don, back when John Sununu got into a lot of flack for taking limousines and airplanes for dental appointments, and there's no outcry about the corrupt mayor of Baltimore City. It's an outrage. But with that thought, happy Easter, happy Passover, everyone. We'll see everyone next week. And I believe Joe Biden might actually be addressing Congress, possibly. George Sessions, maybe.
So, when's he going to... So if everyone is vaccinated, why do we still need the masks?
Exactly. Even the science today, I don't know if you heard, the science says...
CDC said...
Once you get the shot, you don't need to even wear a mask because you're no longer carrying it, nor are you contagious. Follow the science. Dr. Fauci, he's a good employee. But enough said there. But, yes, Chris.
Oh, no, I was just saying.
Yeah.
See, he's ready to say goodbye.
Okay. Everyone, let us know what you think of this new setup, how you like it, different setting. I think it went pretty smoothly. I like the videos, so we can have shared videos and stuff like that. But good night, everyone. See you all next week. Take care.
All right.